lackluster, hollow, surface-level, pretentious, bland, generic slop. Where some see a fraud, thousands see the next Miyazaki. To be honest, I've got nothing particularly glowing to say about Garnt these days. I had long since written him off as comfortably coasting, posting what felt like same content month after month. But his suddenly released anime original Baan had me rethinking what this anime fan little baby man might actually be capable of. But with such mixed reviews, I started to wonder, is this just a content creator's YouTube video dressed up by the likes of Studio Daisy, or is it art? See, there's no question that Baan is special. Being the only successfully produced YouTuber anime comes with its own air of uniqueness, and maybe even authority. But that never means it is as it appears. After all, when I pick this up and see that it's the same color as a duck, has eyes like a duck, and 4 legs like a duck, I'm rightfully gonna conclude it's a duck. But Baan isn't a duck. It's an anime made by a YouTuber. So the question is this just a content creator having fun with their pocketbook, or a genuinely passionate, meaningful piece of art? Now I think that there's 3 things that separate content from art: the execution, the story, and the impact. If that sounds a little pretentious, good. It's kind of like a sommelier telling you the reason you should like this whiskey is because of how it tastes. Well, duh. Break it down for me. The difference between content and art isn't simply production quality. It's the quality of production.
18 minutes. Enough time to run a few miles, not enough time to watch an entire anime.
Unless you're watching Baan. Now, Ernest Hemingway once wrote that it wasn't by accident that the Gettysburg Address was so short. The laws of prose writing are immutable as those of flight, of mathematics, of physics. He meant that keeping things short and precise is the backbone of quality in the trade, that it's the mark of a skilled craftsman. But 18 minutes is short, even for a short film. Even more so for one that asks so much of us to connect with the inner emotions of its multiple characters. If Baan weren't relying on being so emotionally evocative, if Baan were just another YouTube video dressed up as an anime, then maybe the short runtime wouldn't matter. But Baan clearly wants to be felt, and that's where the short runtime starts to become a real problem. Now I'm going to talk about the why for the runtime being a problem far later in this video during the story section, because while I think I've stumbled upon a much deeper understanding of why the runtime feels short, we've got a lot to cover before I can properly explain it to you. So stick around for that. For now, let's focus on the production side of things. See, if you want to be art, every frame, every sound, every second needs to bleed purpose. There has to be magnitude, even to the small things, especially to the small things. But despite the fantastic production quality, I'm not so sure Baan effectively uses its production. Of the 18-minute and 52-second YouTube video length, if you remove the opening credits, title screen, and end credits, the entire animation time only totals 16 minutes and 18 seconds. So why is Baan so damn short? Budget. The great killer of hopes and dreams. See, making an anime isn't cheap, and at the end of the day, I don't know what Garnt's personal finances look like, thus I can't fault him for not ponying up the extra cash to lengthen the runtime to the original 40-ish minutes his script was supposed to be. But if we're willing to accept this unknown budget as the ceiling, the question quickly becomes, how well did he use the space beneath it? See, I fully believe that despite the scarily short runtime, Baan could have portrayed its story to a far more refined, captivating, and resonant extent. Back in high school, I was given this critical piece of writing advice. If it's not necessary, get rid of it. It makes sense after all. Why keep something in when it doesn't add to the overall work? After all, that's how you end up with bloat and filler, and anime fans hate filler. I do this with my own work to an extreme. Most of my YouTube videos have gone through massive cutting processes, causing them to come out to 2/3 or even 1/2 of what they were originally written to be. So seeing Baan, I did what any insane critic with far too much time and far too little employment would do. I recut it myself. The result? 13 minutes, 54 seconds, and a grave discovery. See, I'd like to say no mercy, but it's a lot more complicated than that. What I quickly came to notice was a far deeper problem that's vastly under-exaggerated by that 13 minute and 54 second figure I just gave you. Here's where I have to get mean. Garnt and Studio Daisy, if you somehow happen to be watching this, I'm sorry for what I'm about to say, because while this is a genuine critique, and I think it could solve Baan's largest problem, it might be deeply upsetting to hear. The vast majority of what I cut was the Naga scenes. I get it, it's cool, it's pretty, and it adds this little bit of mysterious otherworldly texture. But give me a chance to explain why the Naga, as beautiful as it is, might actually hurt Baan more than it helps it, at least given the short runtime version we ended up with. See, despite its beauty, I don't think the Naga actually adds anything to the overall narrative that Baan is trying to tell. While it's been plastered all over the merch and pushed into many of the establishing and closing cuts, its iconization seems a little more than a little misplaced. I think it genuinely takes time away from the parts of the film that give the anime its most emotional and vital impact. I'd like to pose this question to you, dear viewer. When you think back on Baan, do you have the Naga in the forefront of your mind? Personally, what I envision are the scenes that make up the backbone of the emotional content. The deeply human moments, Daichi and Rin wrestling with change, discovery, and identity. And while I might have just asked you, dear viewer, what you thought, I actually already have a good idea. I went through around 200 Mal reviews to see what they had to say. Many loved the emotional beats of the story, many commented on the relatability, and many noted the quality of animation, music, and art style. But not a single person mentioned the Naga. Even worse, the word short was used an average of 1.8 times per review. And while that number is inflated due to people saying things along the lines of short film, many were lamenting the runtime. When you look really close at a Van Gogh, it can be easy to see nothing but a mess of lines. Yet as you zoom out, you start to understand the value and purpose behind every brushstroke, slowly building up to a meaningful culmination of lines and shapes that form a deceivingly precise image. But most of the scenes with the Naga are largely simple ones meant to look nice. Perhaps they're meant to give a bigger picture of the overall world, but we don't see that world. As the Naga sits, it feels like little more than a cinematic throw pillow. But Baan doesn't need that. The animation already looks great, and the Naga doesn't add to the visual storytelling, as there really isn't much story it tells. Sure, the Naga adds to the depth of the world, but Baan is a character-driven story and doesn't need the world to be more in-depth. It needs the characters to be. I even tried to find references to Thai Naga symbolism in hopes I was missing something, and didn't really find anything. As it sits, it doesn't feel like it's able to serve as a part of its whole, but rather something aside from it. Now, the keenest among you may be thinking, but what about the importance of the Naga in this scene? And that is a good question. The Naga is necessary for this scene. But here's where my meanness has to get worse. I think this entire scene, while cool, was perhaps the lowest point of the film. This isn't an action story, and I don't see why we needed to have a dramatic fight scene in the middle of a story about human connections and leaving home. Ironically, the moment of highest spectacle is the one most disconnected from the heart of the plot. I can't imagine having a dramatic combat scene in the middle of My Dress-Up Darling, even if it were set in another world. It's clearly just not what the show is about at its core. I mean, tell me if I'm crazy for this below, but the only value I think this scene actually has for the narrative of the story is that it's the catalyst for Daichi and Rin to meet, which doesn't justify it being there. Rin and Daichi could have met in any number of different ways, many being far more relatable and emotionally resonant. It could have even been so simple as to have Rin be Daichi's actual daughter, enabling more time to cover Daichi's side of the story in place of explaining the overly complicated familial situation they're in. Because while Rin's story is fairly solid, Daichi's is a little lacking. I really think that restructuring all this time spent on the Naga into something that further deepens the emotional breadth of the story, and especially Daichi's side of it, would be much more meaningful. To make matters worse, my original cut down quote of 13 minutes and 54 seconds only cut off the fluff shots and didn't include cutting this scene, which would drop the total runtime down to 12 minutes and 29 seconds. It might sound like I'm just complaining, but when we accept this unknown budget as the runtime limiter, we need to ensure that the story is told to the most impactful degree, and the entire existence of the Naga seems to be in direct opposition to that end. Besides just the time taken up, the animation of the Naga is likely far more costly per second of runtime than anything else presented. So if it were removed, not only would you have that freed up runtime for more storytelling, but also potential leftover budget for more runtime. To be clear, I don't hate Baan by any means. I actually think most of it was fantastically well made. I just think there's a lot of time that should have been spent telling more of Rin and Daichi's story, which ended up being spent on the oohs and ahs of the Naga. For a start, the character design is brilliant. While Daichi's younger self is a little generic, which is on purpose, this older version is very interesting, clearly showing in his appearance his change into the person he now is, ultimately taking on characteristics more representative of his new world. Rin is extraordinarily cute, and her outfit design perfectly fits the world, plus she also brilliantly captures the adolescent curiosity I believe that her character is meant to portray. Most of the background characters feel like they actually had a bit of thought put into them, and as for Rin's mom, gallons. As for sound, I don't really need to say it, but I will. Kevin Pinkin did an excellent job with the music. It may even be my favorite work of his. The pacing of the music perfectly frames all of the scenes, and the sound effects add a beautiful layer of light depth to the whole world. As for the voice acting, obviously Alex Lee did an excellent job as always, and all of the JP voices felt nothing less than professional. Most notably, however, was Sydney's absurdly captivating work as Rin. She's sharp, natural, and hauntingly adorable. And moving to animation is where it becomes evident that there are some highly experienced people on the team at Studio Daisy. The cuts feel deliberate, the frames purposeful. I can feel the expertise in how they allow different scenes to move, hold, and breathe. There's silent beauty in the craftsmanship here that no amount of critique could possibly take away. The subtle and thoughtful use of panning and zooming shots brings some animation to scenes that would have felt still, and are often sandwiched between more complex shots that ensure that the pans and zooms aren't overused. It's frankly gorgeous. In the end, Baan definitely has the gravitas of a well-produced anime despite some glaring flaws, and is genuinely far more impressive than the vast majority of anime that comes out these days. Despite the runtime problem, this is certifiably, undeniably, a quality anime. And even with how spiteful I may have sounded about it, I'm only slightly jealous I'm not the one making an anime. Were there enough runtime to flesh out the narrative and keep the Naga scenes, they do make for an elegant addition. But now we have to talk about the part that Garnt had the largest hand in creating, and the true make or break of any anime. See, if the difference between content and art was simply production quality, Baan would no doubt be art. But as pretty moving pictures alone don't make an anime, we need to look at the story they portray. So let's talk about home. The concept of home is an often debated topic, and what makes a home homey is considered deeply subjective. But I think that pursuit of finding a place in which we can belong, of discovering purpose in people, communities, and locations is a borderline universal experience. If you've followed Garnt's content as much as I have, and also have as much of a parasocial relationship with him as I do, it's easy to see just how much of his life, thoughts, and hardships help to form the finished story. And it's this idea of going out into the world and finding the place in which we feel we belong, a place we can call home that Garnt attempts to explain with Baan. Seeing Rin and Daichi stepping out into their new worlds as if contradictory to each other is moving. They both take the same step in their journey towards their own futures, but for dramatically different reasons and to dramatically different ends. Daichi seems to leave because he's called towards something less comfortable, something more dangerous than his prior life, but also far freer. Somewhere he can live as he pleases and explore not only the new world around him, but his own identity. He ventures away from his family into the unknown, drawn by a deeper sense that there's more out there, something worth the risk that his new world will expose him to. I don't think he's trying to escape or run away. I think he's trying to learn who he is, attempting to discover what his prior life may have concealed. And to do that, he needed to leave. He needed to be somewhere absent from the familiar faces and old expectations, absent from anything that may have once defined him. Only in that absence did he have the room to fill his life with the things he chose for himself. Only in that absence could he learn who he truly is. Only in that absence could he find the place he could call home. And I think he finds that in Reen and his new community. While it's not perfectly clear in the anime, lines like, "Tonight's special is a Euthanian favorite, Dai's famous curry," help to embed the idea he's become a valued member of his new world. The responsibilities he takes on come to form his genuine identity, and the people he takes them on for form his sense of purpose, and equally, his sense of belonging. When we see this short scene of him cooking this massive meal, clearly meant for a crowd, it feels like the culmination of his journey, an act of service to the people who've come to define his world, and an affirmation of his conclusion that home isn't the place you start, it's the place you build with others once you finally figure out who you are. But Reen doesn't come to that same conclusion. In contrast, she leaves because she feels like she's a burden to Daichi and wants to prove otherwise. She wants to prove that she can handle herself and find her own way, so she decided to do what her father once did and ventured forth into another world all on her own. But it clearly doesn't go as planned. Unlike Daichi, who flourished in his new world, finding exactly what he was looking for, Reen seems to keep hitting setback after setback, and even by the end of the film, she still never seems to have quite gotten her footing. Her new world is pseudo-isolating. Her magic and wings make her an outsider and never let her feel a sense of belonging. But returning to her old world shows her that home isn't about proving yourself, but rather being yourself. The dichotomy of Rin and Daichi's experiences and conclusions is nothing short of poetic. Two people who found themselves together due to fate make the same yet opposing decision to venture into their own unknown, hoping to find a place to belong. One finds exactly what they were looking for, the other longs for what they had. Daichi finds home by pushing into the unknown, while Rin finds it by falling back into the known. But both needed to experience something completely outside of their prior frame of life to come to their own understanding. There's a beauty to this asymmetry, and it's especially easy to see when Rin leaves. When she does, Daichi loses a small part of what he considers home, and Reen, without knowing, ultimately loses it all. In the end, they both come to two completely different yet extremely connected conclusions as to what home means to them. And together, Baan has managed to capture the perfect depiction of what home truly is. Here's where we can finally come to understand why so many people think Baan feels short. See, while countless great stories have been told in the same or even shorter time spans, Baan has a unique problem. Earlier I mentioned that this feeling of pursuing a place in which you belong is a borderline universal experience. And I said borderline for a reason. I think Baan has mixed reviews due to this exact sticking point. Now, I've already heard things along the lines of, Baan needs more breathing time, and we need to see more of the world and characters. And that's all fine. But I wanted to get to the deepest underlying reason for this short feeling. I think the question we need to be asking is, why does it need more runtime for these reasons? When I went through the different reviews and YouTube videos about Baan, I quickly found a dramatic duality of opinions. And I believe the cause of it is Baan's lack of complete universality. See, there are a lot of things that Baan kind of skips over when it's telling its story. Most importantly are the actual struggles and triumphs the characters are experiencing when they leave home, and a deeper exploration of how the characters are feeling about those experiences. See, Baan leaves a lot of the moments of self-discovery and personal learning up to simple montages, which only really set a tone and don't particularly dive into what's happening very deeply. They don't really tell that much of a story. The visual storytelling in Baan is quite good. It's just not enough to fully elaborate on these complex experiences. The reason Baan feels short is because it expects you to understand what it's portraying. For the most part, the people who loved what Baan presented and thus rated the short film highly were people who had some sort of experience in their own life that mirrors Rin and or Daichi. Conversely, the people who seem not to care all that much about Baan largely explained that they didn't really get it. And I have to think that the reason that they didn't get it is because many have never experienced that borderline universal experience. See, if you're a person like me who has had the experience of leaving home, you're able to fill in many of these blanks. When you see Daichi cooking on his own and wishing he had spent more time cooking with his mother, it's easy to fill in a much broader and emotionally impactful version of your own experience cooking for yourself for the first time. Your reminiscing is what gives the scene its depth. Now, there's no better way to make a viewer feel emotionally connected than to invoke some of their most emotional personal life experiences. But if you rely on it, you alienate those who don't have something to fill in the gaps. If you've never left home, if you've never returned home, and if you've never figured out what you consider home, you're gonna have a hard time connecting. If you don't have these deeper emotional experiences to fill in these fairly lacking key moments of growth, reflection, and discovery, then there's no real way you're going to be able to resonate with Baan's story. Were these moments expanded and people who didn't have these experiences were brought through the emotional journey and through the story explained how to feel in these moments, Baan could have connected with all viewers instead of some. That is why I think people felt like Baan was short. The story simply doesn't spend enough time making everyone feel what it's trying to make them feel. And if you don't know that feeling, you just can't fill it in. Or even if you do, Baan may not have spent enough time evoking that feeling within you for you to connect with its story. In reality, Baan isn't distinctively too short or unfinished. The problem is that it causes some of us to feel like it is because it doesn't do enough explaining of what it's portraying to make us feel what it wants us to feel, which is what makes the aforementioned misuse of time so dramatically important. And to make matters a little more complicated, its enigmatic, though very well done ending, never gives us an answer to what home is. Now, I actually like that it leaves this part up to the viewer, but when we see so little of the internal conflict in the story, it causes the ending to have less impact. So I'd like to reflect on Baan's title for a moment, as I believe it gives us an interesting clue for us to answer what is home ourselves. Baan, meaning home, is fairly straightforward, but Otona no Kyokai is perhaps a perfect marker for the journey of finding home. The boundary of adulthood as it translates is a perfectly characteristic way to describe the themes and even demographics of Baan. As my former psych major self would tell you, it sounds quite similar to emerging adulthood, which is a period in your life generally around the ages of 18 to 28 where you are crossing that boundary from being just a teenager to being an adult. It's a part of life largely centered around finding yourself. It's a period of feeling in between, a period of being on the boundary of adulthood. It's basically Baan in a nutshell. It's also a good place to start looking for the answer to what is home. So in hopes we can find that answer, I'd like to share some of my own story, how it compares to Rin and Daichi's, and what you might be able to learn from it as well. Personally, I've struggled for a decent while now trying to find a place in which I feel like I belong. And it wasn't until recently that I started to learn that you first need to understand yourself before you can find your place. After all, if you don't know what your puzzle piece looks like, how are you supposed to slot it into the right spot? Believe it or not, out of high school, the path I had planned for my life was becoming an officer in the United States military, specifically the Navy. Which I think is pretty funny when I consider all you know of me is that I'm just some internet weirdo who talks about anime. Which is true. However, after high school, I found myself unable to get accepted into my local college with the Navy ROTC program, which is required to become an officer. With that path closed, I didn't know what to do with my life. I found myself lingering around with no sense of purpose, identity, or direction. I felt like little more than some shapeless blob. I felt as though there was nowhere I belonged. For the next couple of years, I would stumble along at least half a dozen other career paths. and at some point, some part-time schooling at a college I could actually get accepted to. But eventually I felt as though not a single path I had followed was actually leading anywhere. Nothing fit. Due to that and the combination of insurmountably feeling lost and unsure of myself, I started to feel suffocated. The eventual conclusion I came to was that I had to leave what I knew behind in hopes of finding something meaningful, somewhere I could belong. So like Daichi, I made the choice to leave, to push into the unknown in search of something greater than myself. But unfortunately, I didn't know where to go. I just knew I couldn't stay where I was. So I did what I could, and I chose to follow the path closest to what I thought was right, and trusted that, like Daichi, I'd learn to navigate along the way. Luckily, I soon found out that the couple of part-time credits I took ended up being enough to pass the qualification for the school I had originally wanted to get into, and thus the ROTC program as well. In part for the same reason that Reen had wanted to prove herself, I felt the need to demonstrate to both myself and my family that I was capable of living on my own and pursuing something worth a damn, rather than rotting away as a shut-in. But I also set out similarly in tune with Daichi's drive to find something outside of his prior life, find adventure, and hopefully find a place to belong. Well, I didn't go to another world, I did go to another city. Suddenly I was surrounded by strangers joining a program that would go on to completely flip my life on its head. I found myself joining Army ROTC instead of Navy, as it seemed and ended up being a much better fit for me. Now to be clear, ROTC is not equivalent to Big Army, and I have no military or veteran status. But it is an actual commissioning pathway. Due to being one of the larger ROTC programs across the country, I did live and learn a decent amount about the Army lifestyle. I found myself waking up at 5 to get to PT, doing ruck marches, vomiting during formation runs, trying not to vomit during the sprint drag carry, keeping formation at about 15 Fahrenheit for a motivational speech no one needed, stick lanes, FTXs, falling out of end of PT formation to vomit because HIIT workouts suck, and enough greeny weenie for the JROTC kids to find out that they, in fact, did not want to be in the Army. It was horribly great and greatly horrible. For a long time, I lived similar to Daichi, exploring a world that was entirely new to me, one where my past didn't matter, where people only saw the current me and I was able to learn so many new things. And I think that's the magic of Daichi's side of the story. He steps into a new world completely undefined by anything he used to be, able to choose everything for himself, unconstrained by any prior experiences, able to forge his own path. It was only when I joined ROTC that I felt that too. The people around me didn't know my past. They didn't see the failures or the setbacks. They only saw the person who showed up at 5 a.m. and put in the work. Who I was in the moment mattered, not who I was in the past. Being in that community for the first time in my life, I felt a genuine sense of purpose, drive, and even a bit of a sense of belonging. So the question is, why am I here and not there? Well, as I recall, we were on our end of year FTX, a couple of long days and very short nights in. I was definitely dehydrated, and while I only found out just after getting back and seeing a doctor, sick with no fun 19. I remember lying on the cold ground, rifle up, pulling security, freezing my ass off because leadership didn't allow us to put on cold weather gear. And in that moment, I felt upset. Not because of the suck, that was one of my favorite parts of ROTC. Doing shitty stuff and overcoming yourself is one of the greatest feelings life has to offer. And aside from the cold, the given situation really wasn't that bad. See, the reason I felt upset in that moment was because I realized I had betrayed myself. On the hard dirt, in the middle of a military base that's in the middle of nowhere, I came to the harsh conclusion that, despite my love for the lifestyle, I wasn't me. I realized that I was in a uniform that I don't think fits me, that I formed an archetype of the person I thought I wanted to be, and ultimately ignored many parts of myself in the process. Don't get me wrong, I was by no means entirely inauthentic. My love for that time is still very real, but I realized I was actively ignoring some of the things that were most important to me because I was wrapped up in the pursuit of the wrong path. In the end, that part of my life concluded in a similar manner to what we see of Reen, turning back to a life she once had because only after being away from it was she able to realize how sacrosanct it was. In the same way that Reen was only able to understand what she valued due to her new experiences, I found that I had gained so much perspective during that time. I'm not sure I would have ever found my way had I not had that experience. Today, I still don't have a perfect sense of belonging, and I've not yet found home. But now that I've learned what I'm made of and what I value, I believe I can start to head in the right direction. What Baan has taught us here is that home is a place we find once we've found our genuine selves. A place we can show our fully authentic side and not feel persecuted or ridiculed. A place where we have no need for walls surrounding our hearts or blinds in front of our eyes and no masks separating who we are and who we show the world. To be home is simply the feeling of being able to let down the drapes of inauthenticity, any non-genuine faces we may feel the need to show the outside world, and be loved for being our genuine self, even if the only one to love us is ourself. Reen and Daichi were ultimately in pursuit of finding their own identities first and foremost. Only after that did they come to understand their personal concept of home. And it was the same for me. If you want to find a place you can happily, honestly call home, take a note from Baan and attempt to find yourself first. I believe Baan's goal is to usher us towards just that, finding ourselves and thus a place we can call home. Perhaps a house, a loved one, a pet, a community, perhaps even a meal as in the anime. Whatever allows us to have a place we can be ourselves. American novelist Thomas Wolfe once wrote that you can't go home again. He explained that with every passing day, the world around us is constantly changing. And as the faces and the places and the names change, you'll find that the life you once lived is now only alive in your memories, as you can no longer go back to a place that once was, but no longer is. In contrast, perhaps my all-time favorite musician wrote a song about exploration. He sang of tracing one warm line through a land so wide and savage, only to find in the end, nothing but the road back home again. To be honest, neither I nor Baan can tell you what home is or was to you. That's something you must learn on your own, somewhere out there beyond the boundary of adulthood. But what Baan can tell us is that if we want to find a place to call home, we must first do whatever it takes to find ourselves. And in doing that, we can know where to head so we may find our home. For a moment, I'd like to look past Baan's story and reflect on Garnt's, because my favorite moment of this entire saga of Garnt creating an anime wasn't even a part of the anime itself, but rather this exact moment. At the end of his documentary, he's asked, "Now that it's all over, did you ever find out where your home was?" And instead of answering, he just smirks and lets out a light laugh, then chooses to show us. The faces of family, of friends, and even of fans. The people who have helped to build him into the person he now is. The people who define his most valuable moments, and have now led him to achieve something he only once dreamed of. The people around him, the stories they share and continue to create, and the memories that they will carry with them into the future. Even those of us who have watched and supported him over the years have become an important part of his story. And all of that is what he considers home. Baan was never just about Reen and Daichi finding a place to call home. It was about Garnt and us as well. Now I've decided after editing everything up to this point to make a bit of an addition. See, after working through a majority of this video and spending dozens more hours with Baan and my own writing, I feel like there are a couple of points that need to be raised. First, I want to emphasize this, as so many people seem to be misunderstanding what Baan is actually about. Baan is not about home. Not exactly. It's about finding home, about learning what you consider home. And to be as clear as possible, Baan is presenting home as a place of belonging. This concept of trying to find a place in which you belong is why I told my own story. I wanted to demonstrate that there are many moments in our lives where we'll feel out of place and lost, but also that the only way for us to find what we're looking for is to actively look for it. After all, you're never going to find your missing car keys if you never look for them. What Baan is trying to do is show us that taking any path, even the wrong one, will help us learn who we are and thus where we can one day find ourselves belonging. If we go the wrong way, we can always course correct. However, when we choose to stand still, we have to understand that life won't just hand us anything, whether that's belonging like in Baan or any other aspect of our lives. Be it success, love, meaning, whatever you desire, inaction is the antithesis of discovery. And I think Baan's thematic objective is specifically to help push us towards taking those steps needed so that we can find a place we belong. As such a small content creator myself, it's frankly hard to spend so much time making something that very well may amount to nothing. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be here at all if I didn't have a love for doing it. But it is a lot of time spent where my time might be better spent elsewhere. It's genuinely hard to feel any real sense of permanence. But in a strange way, Baan has helped me to realize that doing this, making these videos, is where I feel most like myself. Telling these stories, being able to speak freely about the things that I love and sharing them with you, and also getting to hear your stories about how anime have connected with you in return, has given me a sense of belonging greater than anything I felt before. In the same way that Garnt has found the place he belongs through his journey on YouTube, I truthfully, genuinely hope that this little corner of AniTube can one day become a community. I really want to try and push the envelope and show the world just how great of a medium of storytelling anime really is. Because it disappoints me to see anime so often dismissed as something lesser. And I'd like to think that if you've made it this far into the video, you probably agree with that sentiment. See, at the end of the day, I believe that stories are the key medium for people to connect, that all of our relationships are built on the foundation of our own stories, and that no matter what form a story is packaged in, it has the capability to alter people's lives for the better. Stories are meant to connect us, to remind us that we are never alone in our own struggles and triumphs, and to enable us to find a place we can truly call home. And I'd like to see anime treated with the creative respect that it deserves, as I genuinely believe that there is no better form of storytelling out there. So if that message resonates with you, maybe this community can become a place we can all be anime fanatic losers together. With that said, this is probably the best place to do my obligatory YouTube call to action. So like, subscribe, consider supporting the channel and such. But what I'd like to see most is a comment. Tell me, what do you think home is? What brought you here, and where do you want to go? Now, I may have gotten a little off track there, but before we get to the conclusion of this video, there's one more thing I think is important to understand. Content versus art. See, in the modern day, our relationship with consumption has become disturbing. And if we don't have an understanding of what separates content from art, I believe that, especially with the unnerving rise of AI, we may lose one of the most important parts of our human experience. So what is the difference? Now, while I don't want to speak for you, I bet I can when I say that YouTube Shorts and TikTok has probably taken far too much of your time. Mine too. But what I find interesting is that the moment I click off a YouTube Short, I forget it. It takes no more than 30 seconds for however long I spent mindlessly scrolling to become meaningless. That time just vanishes into nothingness. This brain rot is stealing our lives and giving us nothing. And as AI slop becomes more prevalent, it only gets worse. But the thing is, it's not just these short-form dopamine farms that are the problem. It's everywhere. There are countless creators that are, well, you know the word, grifters. And these grifters are swiftly stealing our limited time in this world to enrich their pockets while giving us nothing. Now, I'm not trying to name names, so I won't. But what I'm trying to say is think. Think back on the content you've watched and going forward, the content you will watch. Ask yourself, is this something valuable, or am I just wasting my time padding some internet loons' pockets? To be completely fair, wasting time is something that's going to be completely subjective. It's not like this is about being productive all the time, just getting value from your time. I can't understate just how much the value of a laugh should not be underestimated. but there is a very large difference between scrolling through the endless dopamine factory and consuming something genuinely creative, evocative, and entertaining. Gigguk is one of my favorite content creators, and when I leave one of his videos, I feel joy, I feel happy, I feel good, I feel something. It sticks with me, it has impact. But when I exit shorts or these grifters videos, I feel nothing. This is the difference between content and art. It may seem a little weird to consider someone like Gigguk an artist, and fair enough, maybe there are levels to this. Perhaps a brilliant painter or fantastic illustrator or moving musician is more of an artist. But that's not the point. The point is that content leaves you feeling nothing, while art leaves you feeling something. Art will always have some degree of impact. It doesn't have to be super deep. Meaning and value can be found in some of the silliest and simplest aspects of life, but it has to leave you with something. With all of that in mind, now is when we can finally get to the conclusion of this video, and the most important aspect of Baan. Now this impact section is quite short, and for good reason, because the impact of Baan is something we can't really measure. To be clear, I don't mean the market or industry impact Baan could have as an anime. That's far too analytical and hardly artful. No, I mean to imply personal impact, both for Garnt and for us. I've been seeing people commenting on how interesting it is that an anime reviewer made an anime, but I feel that's dismissive of Garnt because he's always been an artist. Every video he's made was a story he used to connect to those of us in the anime community. He's been creating for over a decade, and he wouldn't have the success he does today if he hadn't learned how to reach people. Baan is just a new way for him to do what he's always done: bring together a community. And it's a beautiful thing to see him now get to create within the very medium that inspired him to create in the first place. It's an incredible and incredibly rare opportunity few will ever see. And I believe Garnt understood that. As such, this opportunity was something he didn't take lightly, and in fact, proved to be worthy of. So thank you, Garnt. Thank you, Studio Daisy, and thank you, Baan. You've made an undeniably beautiful story that I think will not only resonate with countless people, but hopefully help those who feel lost potentially find their way. You've made a seriously captivating anime that had me emotionally stun-locked more than once, and you've made something that more than ever redefines what it means to be a content creator. But what about us, the viewers? This is where Baan has its deepest impact. See, the views, the likes, and the score it gets on Mal are virtually meaningless measures of how Baan has managed to impact the world. The worldly impact can only truly be known by the people who recognized a part of themselves within Rin or Daichi. People who know what it's like to struggle with the concept of home, of finding a place to belong. People who, possibly for the first time in a long time, felt seen. That impact is exactly what cements Baan as a masterful piece of art. It's something immeasurable that sticks with us long after the credits roll. Baan is an elegant and deeply human reminder that our search for belonging will often be filled with loneliness, but that we are also never alone in our search for it. And a reminder that if we want to find a place we can one day call home, we must first find ourselves. A hard but dramatically important truth. If you too feel a little lost in this wide world, if you feel like you don't have a place where you belong, I urge you, stop waiting for life to carry you along and place you where you're supposed to be. Take the time to learn about yourself. Figure out who you genuinely are. Allow yourself to explore the unknown. Embrace the inevitable failures of life as a source of discovery. Embrace change as proof of forward momentum. And learn to be okay with feeling lost. Because only in being lost will you stumble upon the version of yourself that was waiting to be found. And once you do, you'll come to find a place you can finally call home. Thanks for watching.